open our meeting up with a prayer, then the pledge. Pray with me. Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather here this evening. We're here to discuss city business in our community. We ask that you remind us about the things that we serve and the people we serve, and that we're all family and we're all community. We ask that we do those things to glorify your name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance. All right. We do need approval of the agenda that's laid out in front of us. No, it's not listed here, but do we have a motion to approve what's laid out in front of us?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. A second? Thank you. All those in favor? Very good. All right. The first is a public hearing for the 2024 millage rate, which the advertised millage rate is 7.16 mils. This is a little bit chicken before the egg, where we have a conversation about our budget, because we do need to make some budget cuts if we're going to change the millage rate. But this is an advertisement. We do have another hearing on October 22nd at 6 o'clock to discuss this one more time. But this is a public hearing. If you have something to speak on the millage rate, please step forth to the podium.
My name is Marie Evans. I live at 101 Long Street. For 20 years, I was an accountant. For 16 years, I was an attorney. So I've got some background, kind of know a little bit of this stuff. My question in regard to the increase of the millage rate, from what it looks like, it's increasing about a 30% increase. All we hear about all the time in the news is about how people are struggling and how you're going to increase the millage rate that much when we have a lot of people that live paycheck to paycheck on a budget. You've also got to remember that a lot of the houses, they have increased in value, but a lot of the people here in Demorest, the older ones, we're not moving, because whatever we would make, we'd have to put it right back into another home. So the problem that I'm seeing is this millage rate is going to also be a financial burden on some people. And I'd like for y'all to take that in consideration, and because from the way that has been stated is that, for instance, if you had a fair market value of a house of $175,000, your tax increase is $100. Yeah, that may be for a year, but people do live budget to budget all the time anymore. And we've just had a water increase. Now with this on top of it, I think y'all need to make some concessions in regard to maybe not raising it so much this year, because unless house prices are going down, our fair market value, our houses are going up, but nobody's wanting to move to be able to afford for another house. And you're just adding kind of like some pain to what everybody already has experienced. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Megan, have we passed out, has the public had a chance to have these forms yet? You have a problem with me explaining?
No,
what I did
please.
today?
No, please.
Okay. Y'all have these in y'all's packets. What I want to do is explain this to you so that you can, it's going to be the one with the blue writing on it like this, Miss Gail. Look at the other one right there. Just I think that whole thing. Miss Evans, it's the one with the blue writing. The way I explained this at our 12 o'clock meeting, let me point, there's three tax mills proposals in these 6 pages here. The first one, and I'll point to you when y'all are ready, is going to be the 7.16. Let me show you where you go. No, still going up.
I was wondering.
Turn this like it. Yeah, let's see here. No, one more.
Next be the last one.
Yeah. All right. So this was in that should be good. So when you see that number, look all the way across, you'll see the last 6 years, and there's the amount of money for the last 6 years. Rick, I know you know where to look. Yeah, you know where to look from this morning today. So let me get you to the. All right, this is gonna be when I talk about the 1 from 5 to 4 9. I'll set that one there. This one right here is gonna be the one, the second one I talked about, 6.16. And then this one is one right here, 7.16. And if you take your finger, go all the way across, you have the years up here, it tells you what that year's millage rate was. So the last 2 years, we've been at 6.16, then it was 5.16 and 6.06, then in 2019, it was 6.16. And in 2019, the taxes for that year, with that millage brought in $210,000. Not a lot of income for your millage rate there. All right? And what this one is showing you too, again, at 7.16, look down 2 lines below the blue, where it says, on the right-hand side right here, where it says 471,000. That's the amount of income that millage would bring in if this was approved. All right, flip through those 2 pages. Go to your 6.16. That should be this one right here. 6.16. You got that one too, Ms. Evans? Frankie, you good back there? Okay. You look at that one, and that would be, if we did that one, it'd be 3 years in a row. It would stay the same, but it counts as a tax increase because when you look down again, 2 lines below, it's got $405,000. That's what that tax millage would bring into the city. And go to your third one, which will be what's called a full rollback, which is the 5.49. You got that one, Ms. Gail?
Yes.
Okay, yep. So this is rolled it all the way back. You like to say that it's going to be revenue neutral, but it's really not because it's going to generate a little over $17,000, but that's considered not a tax increase. And that would bring in $361,000 for that tax year. Well, that's about $22,000 more than the year before at the 6.16. Council has to pick no higher than 7.16. They could pick something in between, and then the lowest is 5.49, the way it's shown here. And that's why we have to advertise per that amount being at the highest amount, because when I did the proposed budget, I used this tax increase, and when we talk about the budget, I'll go over that. But again, you can see the difference as each one of these come down from the 716. It's about $60,000 less each time. And those are budget cuts I would have to show council and redo the budget. I would have to cut somewhere to $60,000 to $127,000 out of the budget that I'm going to show y'all all, because I got copies of that too, so we can go by some line items and show all of y'all that too, okay? So that's the millage. This gives you the history of how much it was. In 2019, former Mayor Austin was dealing with $210,000 that's it in the millage rate. Now you do have the tax that comes in. Part of this is from the autos and mobile homes and things of that sort. But in 2019, the gross digest was $36 million. Roll it forward, $68,760,000, a $10 million increase from 23 to 24 with this. What changed to increase $10 million? I don't know. So sales, something out there triggered these values. So With y'all hearing this, this is, the key is how we got to these numbers. To fund payroll for general fund, which is everything except water, is $1.4 million. I'm only gonna get, worst case, 471 or 361,000 to go toward that salary. That's not even paying anything else. That's just the salary for everybody except water and sewer employees. So that's where we get into the discussions of water transfers. And again, that's a discussion for the budget time, but just to know where I fall at on what I have to have a month or a year to make this work.
Anybody else like to speak on millage rate? Council? Once again, the budget that we're going to talk about next is a proposed budget of the millage rate of 7.16. So if we are looking at a decrease, we would have to start looking at cuts from the budget that's out in front of you. Anyone else like to speak during this public hearing on millage rate? If not, we'll close this public hearing and move forth to the next public hearing, which is for the 2025 budget. This budget has been out for quite some time. We do have another hearing on the budget, which is October 22nd at 6 p.m. So we have more discussion that's in front of us on the budget. Council, you had the budget here in front of you for a while now. Do y'all have anything that you would like to discuss in this before we move forward further discussions?
This time.
Okay. Would anybody else like to speak on the budget?
Can I step down and go over this for the public too?
Yeah, do we need to let police and fire?
I was gonna walk them through.
All right, very good.
that, if I may.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm gonna come down there and show y'all where we're talking about at, so folks can see the details. So everybody should have a copy without my handwriting, at least with the green strip for the budget. When you take up this first part right here, this is gonna be the general fund income, this first block. There are 23 sources of income for the city, such as property tax, motor vehicle, intangible tax, that's a sale, part of when real estate sales. Franchise fees is what power companies, gas companies, internet companies, telephone companies, et cetera, pay the cities a fee to use the right of way to provide that service. A lot of cities still provide all those services or some of those services. And they pay a percentage that's been agreed upon to all the cities. Counties do not get this, just municipalities and how it was written. And the only franchise fee we get is from Georgia Power. Habersham EMC is a very small amount within our city limits. Insurance premium. Insurance premium is for every policy written inside the city of Demorest. It's $156,000 what I budget for 2024. And that check comes in the month of October. Haven't received it yet. I raised it some to 160, but that and the franchise fees are the two largest items of that sort. Then you got transfer, beer and wine, transfer tax, which is another real estate sale, business license, property tax, interest and penalties, planning and development fees. We have fees so that when people are building, they pay fees to the planning department for their permits, development fees, all those kind of things. You've got interest, you've got debit and credit convenience, miscellaneous revenue, 4th of July income. That one is where we raise we budgeted $15,000 for the current year, and we raised, I think, 18, 20,000, something like that. So that's the income to help offset that $48,000 expense. The other big part that comes from the police is fines and forfeitures, probation fees. That's from people getting speeding tickets and then they're on probation, things of that kind of stuff. State grants, SPLOST, background check. One of the things that Robin, y'all started, Casey, GCIC started how long ago?
It was here before in 2014. Right?
Okay, so it's where they run background checks for corporations. And so you can't solicit the business. There's a lot of things. They gotta have their own security because they're running background checks. So that's some money that we have coming in from there. And the last one is cemetery funds. We had budgeted 5,000 and we're like 4,100 for this year. And the key to that is, 875. The key to that is cemetery plot sales. But we actually only get 15 items out of those 23. And I told you pretty much the bigger ones. And that's the only revenue source for the general fund. Bigger cities that have power, gas, light, internet, phone, their franchise fees could be millions of dollars. But ours isn't. We're getting 100 and then 156,000 total. It's kind of like our millage is so low because where Cornelia's, their millage is being set at 9.5, that will generate $3 million in those taxes for them. They have all the commercial, the businesses, residential, all those things that we don't have in our city limits. Same thing with Clarksville. I don't recall their millage, but they're gonna bring in 1.7 million. We're gonna bring in somewhere between 300 to 471. And Baldwin is gonna bring in 1,150,000. So those are big numbers in their budget. So when I go through those inventory sources, that's everything that we can make money off of in the city. That's not counting water and sewer because that's not part of the general fund. It is its own operating enterprise fund. So when I go down into the cost of the general fund, let me show you this. You see where that kind of tan line is right there? That is what's projected to be the water transfer to balance the general fund. So 3 years ago, we were at 1,000,008, went to 1,000,006 in this current year, and I'm proposing it to be at 1,000,004. The auditors and our CPA says we got to get that number down. A perfect number that's been said going back probably to Mayor Austin's time was somewhere around $800,000. But again, I got 1,000,004 to cover in payroll. So lowering that number is very difficult without having additional income. And I just told y'all the 23 sources and we get 15 sources. So that being said, I've got, if you roll through that first page there, turnover. So the admin, which is City Hall itself, and not the ladies, because they fall under Water Department, correct, Megan? Well, the admin. So that's that first part there, which is $519,000. You go to the next section there is police. Casey's budget is $833,000. It's about a $25,000 increase from 24 going into 25. And the biggest part of that has been difference in salaries. We lost Robin and 2 or 3 other guys to the county, which we all knew. So he brought in new guys. They have to all get fitted in Demorest uniforms. That's also a vest that's fitted to each person's body. And that adds up for his cost in that.
Hey, Mark, sorry to interrupt. What's the total budget for police?
833,660. See it on this right-hand side?
Mine says 879.
Okay. If you'll turn to that page, what does it say on yours, Casey?
833.
Okay, I don't,
Mine says 879.
okay, well, we'll get that. Okay. Point well taken, so we'll get some justification of that.
Oh, it changed. It went up, so it's the higher number. Cause you added in the salary for if anybody leaves their PTO. So it's the
PTO on
higher
our
number.
officers, on any of our employees, they build up to a maximum amount of paid time off. When Robin and those guys left, and any of the fire guys left, we pay them for their paid time off at their current hourly rate. Now, hopefully, we'll pay it out over 8 to 10 weeks, so it's not just a one-time hit. So that's definitely what happened in his existing budget and into the current budget that Dave didn't approve or anything, that he's inherited with that. The other part that Casey does is the GCIC, and it's $136,000, which will be the lower one on that second page right here. And out to the right, it tells you what the total amount is where I have it circled here.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am?
How many police do we have?
We have 7 full-time.
How many cars?
We have 8.
Why does each person have a car?
Why does each person have a car? Well, because sometimes we have to come in, like when we had the storm, a few of us had to work. So if we don't all have a car, then we all can't come out.
Part of that, Miss Gale, too, was made 4 years ago with the current SPLOST that we're under. The city made a decision to buy 5 new cars back then.
Obviously.
So they're paying for those cars through the SPLOST dollars that we're currently under. That was a previous timing of how they voted to do this. And so, but that's a fair question. But typically, the officers all get a take-home car so that if they're out at home and there's an emergency call, they're able to drive their vehicles back in to get here. And it's also a benefit for them to have that. So the last of this second page, there's 2 lines right here. That's the first 2 lines of the fire department. And the biggest item you'll see in there, which would be the salary in the budget of $450,000. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, we know there's some questions in what I'm reading off of. So, then go to the third page there. And on the right-hand side right here, it will give you your total fire budget of $792,000. One of the things that we knew when we started looking for and advertised for a fire chief, there was going to be some deficiencies in our existing department. And so we were going to need to know the facts. And Dave started part-time in February and started full-time, I want to say March the 11th. And Lance started part-time with us and is still part-time somewhere in February. So they started going through all the documents that existed, through the equipment, through anything they could find. And there wasn't a lot of information out there for them to be able to build the case of why we do or why we don't have something. All they could do was give us the facts. And the facts at that time were pretty bleak. And they're still bleak because we have a budget from last year. You got, where's your one page there? Yep, your last, where it shows that at the bottom. That's it. His budget from last year, what he's working on right now, is $594,000. So Dave gave me, and Lance gave me a budget the first time when we started this process back in August. And we've known when we had our March retreat, they did a presentation and told us all about a wish list, but a needs list of things he needed. And unfortunately, his first budget, and again, this is not for throwing rocks. Dave and Lance have done nothing wrong. They're taking what they inherited from what was existing here on the ground. To get us up to a certain speed of level, it was gonna be a $2.1 million budget. And I said, Dave, I can't go from 594 to 2.1. I said, you gotta cut it. So he did. He cut it down to $1.1 million. I said, Dave, that's a great eraser you have, but we gotta go further. So I got it down to 792 because I've got a ladder truck that doesn't run. That's old. And it's gonna cost $150,000 to fix it. And it could last 2 to 3 years. I don't have that $150,000 in this budget. I've got a F-250 rescue truck that's gonna cost $6,000 to fix it. It's worth $2,000 the way it sits. I don't have that in this budget. And the list continues to go. I've got fire hoses that are supposed to last 10 years. I got some that are 30 years old. We go to hook it up at a fire at your house and the hose splits. We got a problem. I hook up another one, it splits. Again, it's just like an expiration on a can of food. Do you really believe it really expires on that day? My mother-in-law does it because there's some old stuff in there. But some people believe that date to be true and they throw it out. But we're working through those. The turnout gear that these guys wear are good for 10 years. And it's $5,000 to fit one man or woman in a turnout gear. And if it's expired past that and there's an accident at a fire and they say, oh, he's been expired for 3 years, it could cause harm to him and cause liability to the city. There's need of additional pumper truck because our pumper truck that we use now that we're paying $94,000 a year, I got 2 more payments on it that it's paid for, can only pump 1,250 gallons per minute. They've got requirements that it's got to be, and I might have my round number wrong. It's got to be below 3,200 gallons per minute. Well, guess what? I only have that one fire truck, but I need to have another, and they don't let me count additional mutual aid from the others to come in for this general help. Now, that's going to be a full discussion at the end of this, part of this, when Dave does something that we've heard about, some new information since this proposed budget. I tell you all that I've always said to council in the public, what kind of fire department do you want in the city? Right now, we have an ISO rating of a 3. An ISO rating is done by an independent company that is funded by all the insurance companies in the country. Because they are an audit team that comes in every 5 or 6 years and audits everything that you have. During COVID, they just took your word for it because they didn't come out. But now it's a different story. They're coming back. It's a very tough thing to be a 1. There's probably 3 or 4 only in the state. And worse that you have no coverage, you're at a 10. And how that affects you is your homeowner policy. Your insurance agent will ask you how far away, their underwriters will look, they'll research the city. And again, I'm telling you all this because if we want to stay at a certain level, it's gonna cost money. Because I just named some things, small equipment, all this kind of stuff. But just to fund the basics, not 4 men or women on a truck, 2 men on a truck per day with the mutual aid, it's going to cost us $792,000, which is a $200,000 increase to fund those positions. And that's barely minimum. Remember that about that number when Dave talks in his presentation. The fire department is very special, public safety. These guys rush in when the rats and the roaches are rushing out with the fire. Police rush into places too. But it's a scenario on public safety in your fire department that you want to have. So with that, in my budget, I have $792,000 But you're gonna see an additional budget that's not included in mine that will be in your package under Dave's presentation. And it's gonna show you roughly $1.1 million, which is gonna be a $500,000 increase to salaries alone, because this ISO is gonna tell you, you gotta have 4 men and women on a truck, not 2, you gotta have 4, otherwise you're going to a 9 or a 10, not really a 10, because that says you have no coverage, somewhere back in there. So those are real situations that are coming up to us that we just heard about 2 weeks ago when these two guys were at a Chiefs conference.
Mark, I'm sorry to mess up your train of thought. In the budget that's out in front of us in the worksheet, it's listed as total fire 909.
I can't answer why I have a different sheet right now.
Okay.
I will have it corrected for next week's meeting.
Okay, great.
That's something that happened between Megan and I and the stacks. I don't know.
Okay, no worries.
So,
So
This
it's
was
incorrect. So no
draft
big deal.
from the October, first part of October, because I'm tracking you with what was handed out then.
okay,
And what they're looking at is the one Megan just handed out.
okay, which is fine. Their numbers are going to be higher than my numbers, is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
So, that being said, police, fire, GCIC, City Hall, administrative, all totals up, total expense of $2.6 million. And that's with showing the $471,000 in income on the property tax at 7.16. Anything less, I gotta cut out of these budgets, this section right here.
You speak to some of the challenges, changes we've had to adjust for the increase in budget starting this year, such as change in state law that affects the fire department, and the fact that your county officials decided to not purchase equipment for the cities anymore?
That is on the first responders. And that's gonna cost us anywhere from $11,000 to $18,000, $19,000. Because the law changed, we could fall under the county's medical doctor for the policy and procedures for them to give you, administer any type of first aid outside of just holding your hand. And so all the cities either have to stay with just being able to hold your hand. We couldn't even do, what else,
We can't do oxygen, we can't do any IVs, we can't do, there's a lot of things.
We can't even get
do
started.
drugs, We can't get started. I can't even put a pulse ox on your finger, to check out what your pulse is.
And so that's a big change that hit us like in June of this year of 24. So you have to wait with our guys sitting there just holding your hand for the ambulance, the EMTs to get there. He can't do anything legally unless you get certified and you have your own city medical doctor, which will cost us $6,000 just to have him to sign off on. And that's real. Thank you, Sean. But that's real. And then these supplies that we used to be able to have for this, the county gave them to us. All that stopped. No more. You'll have to buy them yourself. So, and that's part of the discussion we had when our fire truck EMTs were going out into the county. Well, we could justify it was county bought medical supplies. Well, now I can't justify city bought medical supplies doing county med runs because that's city going to the county. I can't do it. I can only do it in reverse because the county's buying that. So that's a big deal, and that's only going to get more expensive as we go. So, all right, go to the next page that has these colors. The first one up here you'll see is the Downtown Development Authority. And basically it owns the properties downtown. It owns the old city hall. It owns the post office building. And City Hall pays 60% of the note payment on this building. We transfer that to them. The water department pays 40% of this note on this building to the DDA. So that's the advances in, because we give them the money, they turn around and there's a paper trail of them paying the bank. You'll see where we have the rental property, a farmhouse, and Old City Hall and the post office, and all those rents come into the DDA. Go down to the SPLOST. We've been averaging, I've used last year and this year, $30,000 a month for SPLOST. We probably are hitting 32, 33 a month, but it's going to generate up to 360,000 for the year. Plus, it could be a little more. And I've got almost $400,000 in our current SPLOST account. So we would have that current balance plus this projected balance of another 360 on that. But again, I'm spending SPLOST dollars on water and sewer projects that exist now. So that the money rolls in and then it rolls out as an expense. But that's basically on par there. Down below where the last green line is right here, this is the water fund. That line's second line down shows you what the projected income is. It shows you what the projected income was or is for the last 2 months of 24. And then it tells you the late fees, the cut on and off fees from cutoffs, miscellaneous, hydrant fees, Servline, which is our insurance protection company for leaks, sewer fees, and advance money coming in of $50,000 for SPLOST. And then the last four on that.
Miscellaneous revenue.
That was $5,000. That could have been a grant.
Well, it was 35,000.
All right, I'm looking.
Miscellaneous underwater sewer.
Let's see, let me find you 35.
About a little less than half.
Oh, 35. That's sewer fees, sewer taps. You got water meter sales at $3,015, and then you got sewer fees for the tap.
Well, I think also that's from running water lines that we charge.
It could be that too, because one thing we do is our department will run the water line at your expense because you're wanting to expand the service or bring the service to your house. We have started where before you have to buy the equipment, the supplies, and you have to pay us to install it for you. We'll be cheaper than a general contractor out there. And so that's another revenue source that comes into the water and sewer part of that. But water sales, water install fees, it's budgeted in 24 at $400,000. We're at $390,000 through August. And there's, so we should exceed that between September, October, November, and December, because our financials are pulled through August 31st. And you can see where I budgeted for water install fees of $450,000. And again, they sell for a little over $3,000 a piece. And water sales of the meters are still people coming in each and every day. All right, the last four on that page will be the expenses for the water and sewer fund. When you turn the page, you'll see a bright line of yellow like this. That bright line there says that is the water transfers required by the general fund. So it's going to take $1,390,000, which is $200,000 less than 24. As you can see across the way, under the 24 budget, it's $1,590,000. So $1,600,000. That goes through multiple items of their expenses, vehicles, the different towers, water tanks. We have to pay to have those monitored, maintained, painted, washed out, all those on contracts. And you all will see the hospital being totally washed out of their tank next week. So those are big items on there. The admin total for all that comes up to $2,760,000 for me, but we'll have that corrected. The last page, but you'll see the yellow and looks like orange on the bottom. That's going to go through the last of all the expenses. The sewer is a much smaller asset than the water. Sewer is like your lost leader in development when people are coming, because where the cities and other municipalities make the money is in the sale of the water. And again, that's why we talked about last month we sold 68 million gallons of water. That means that's how much people demand. We can get basically 60 million gallons a month from Baltimore, which is 2 million a day, and then 30 million from Toccoa, which is 1 million a day. And then our one well that's up is about 8 million a month. So, and then we have to pay, we've negotiated prices from those two cities. And then that's where our engineers do the projections of what our cost has to be able to sell the water and deliver the water to 75% of the county. I got 756 fire hydrants in the city and county. A fire hydrant costs $5,600. I've got about 50 that are down in and around the county. I do the math, that's about $365,000 in fire hydrants, and the water department provides those. And that cost of $5,600 is only the cost of the material. Brian's guys put them in. There could be another $2,000 per if we had to pay an independent company. So that when a fire hydrant gets run over, a bush hog hits it and nobody ever knows and never reports it, I can't charge somebody back for that. And that's just a dead cost to the city water department. And that's real. We have now allocated one person in the city, very trustworthy young man that does impeccable work. He has done about 172 out of the 756. So he just starts off with a map going this street, this street, this street. They service them, they weed eat them, they paint them. There's oil and grease in certain ways they all have to be handled. And that's something we haven't done. So that's one guy allocated to doing just that. So we'll see how long it takes him, and then he'll probably have to start over another time there. So when you ask us to cut some things, there's a lot of things that come from EPD requirements. Our sewer plant can produce up to 800,000 gallons a day, but we're only permitted at 400. And we're hitting about 300,000 gallons a day. If we wanted to take it from the 4 to the 800, the additional cost, not for anything that's needed at the plant other than EPD paper requirements, will cost us so much more to move to that environmental level in the requirements we would have to do. The odds of taking any more money out of the Chattahoochee, probably pretty slim to none chances. One thing we do have is we had a well that the city bought in 2007. Name of that subdivision again, Jerry? Waterford, which is back this way. And that was a private development, and then they went bankrupt or whatever during the real estate depression. Well, the city bought that. At that time, that well could produce 1,250,000 a day. So round numbers, let's just call it 37 million gallons a month. But it's a well that's into the aquifer, not into a little stream or something, which is about 60 to 70 feet down. Last month, we had that same well tested, because it has not been running for the last 6 months. That's some issues, not water quality, just water color. And they tested that water 72 hours straight for 3 solid days, pumping it up, pumping it out into the approved creek it could flow into. And it can still pump today at 1,250,000 a day. And its recovery time to put its water table back at the same starting point was way less than what they expected. So that's all good news. If we wanted to try to build a water plant there, round numbers, it's gonna cost us $10 million. But that's another $10 million on top of the city of debt. And to produce 37 million gallons. Now I'm selling 68 on average here. So I can recoup 37 million of our own water, which my cost is much less. And then I can share the difference of 20 million gallons between Baldwin and Toccoa. So it can be a cost savings, but you do this, you borrow the money, it's at a very low interest rate. They'll give you 40 years to pay it back. But you're building on a well. Your odds there is what happens if the well goes dry? There's $10 million. Other option is we can send the water, that 1.25 million gallons, to Baldwin for them to treat it. And then we would capture that water as our own in there. A lot of devils in the detail with that option. So we're constantly looking at ways to lower our cost. But again, as Ms. Evans said about inflation, we have inflation hitting us every day. Brian Popham said before COVID, he could run a water line, just water, not sewer, PVC, for $40,000. That same line today is $152,000 for that same 1 mile. How did that happen? How does everything cost more? Nothing is what it used to be. And so our chemicals, I think we've got about 85,000 that we have to treat everything with. They keep going up. Everything along the ways. Sean asked me this morning, or at the noon meeting, what's some of the things that we could say cost the city to go up. And biggest thing is, you know, the transfers in 23 were $1.8 million. This year, $1.6 million, we're down to $1.4 million. So that means my general fund is up $200,000 that I got to come up with that. We cut the $200,000 in the transfers. We cut out $600,000 out of this existing budget of capital improvements for water, sewer, and the city. We now have a code enforcement officer. Raise your hand. We have a full-time fire chief and code enforcement officer, which he splits his salary between there. And then we've got additional cost to enforce the issues that people are doing with their properties, where he has to serve warrants, they have to come to court, we have to pay Thomas as the city attorney to come do these things. It takes certified letters, it takes a process. It could take you a year on a dilapidated house, just depending on the title work. And all that is a cost from Dave to Thomas doing legal research. The additional cost for health insurance, general liability, and workers' comp. That is a continuing rising option. The city pays 100% for our full-time employees. And our insurance for the spouse or family, I pay for my wife, that's an additional cost, and that's actually right at the same cost for the city paying for me. Unless it's changed, I'm the only one that's got a spouse or children on our insurance. That's how expensive that is. The things we talked about in the fire department, the deficiencies that's going on over the last so many years of not keeping up with the issues, where I thank Robin and Casey for what they produced out of their police department. Again, their $25,000 increase, and we're not letting him not get things because he's still getting the items he needs, but it's on a much smaller scale for him compared to the fire department. And again, I told you about training gear, turnout gear, small equipment, hoses, condition of older rescue vehicles, like the ladder truck and the F-250. When they hauled that ladder truck here 10 years ago, anybody got a time?
2004.
Oh, is that far back? They couldn't even drive it back from Florida. They had to tow it back. Well, what does that tell you? Why is somebody getting rid of a used fire truck? Because they're most likely some issues and they're upgraded. So again, we have these things that are in here that are in our face. And again, I have to ask, what kind of fire department do we want? Public safety. These guys didn't do anything. They're just reading the facts, you know, that are here. Yes, ma'am.
How did the work that the city paid for a fire truck that had to be towed in the first place?
I don't know.
We're still looking for answers.
I wish I had attended that.
That'd been back in '04.
Yeah.
But the fire engine we have now is 3 years old. It was brand new. And like I said, we paid $94,000 every March. And I got 2 payments left on it. On Casey's police cars, it was the same 5-year deal. We paid $46,000 every August. We got 2 payments left on both of those. So that truck is good. His cars are good. But the fire department has real deficiencies. And I'll tell y'all, I'm gonna be very blunt with Dave. And y'all, Dave's scared like heck for his job right now. And I'm sorry, Kate, we've talked about this, but this is a reality for y'all sitting here. Like, what's gonna happen in the fire department? Y'all just hired me back in February, and I gave you all these deficiencies. What am I gonna do? He and I have had discussions about he and Kate. Where's the fire department going? Is it gonna go away? I don't know. But there's big discussions because they're kicking butt in what they're doing and bringing in quality employees, firefighters, getting the training and things done. So I appreciate the job y'all are doing, and same thing with y'all too, and the job that the whole city is doing, because people aren't here trying to waste money in any way, shape, or form. Not because I'm the city manager, but I can look at this. We've come a long way in 3 years of what we're doing, and because of the mayor and council. We've come a long way in the city. This is the way I like to explain things to this. I met with Miss Evans this morning with her husband on some things. I like to give folks the facts to understand. Same thing on the land use. When we discuss it shortly, I want to do the same kind of process so I can point things out and show them to you. I work just as hard as everybody else in this city, and that lady too sitting over there, and any other city employee in here to produce the best at the end of the day. So, y'all have questions for me or for council, I'll turn it back over.
Thanks for speaking. I think you did a great job going through explaining the budget.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So, I know council hasn't made a decision yet on what the fate of the Garrison Road well is. I mean, obviously, if any kind of mini water plants build over there, that would involve some kind of debt, new debt on there. But is there anything?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Megan was asking for something.
I'm talking about the Garrison Road well. Council hasn't made any decision on the fate of what direction we're going to go with that. But obviously, if we build some mini water treatment plant on it, that's going to involve taking on additional debt. But if we don't go down that road, if we go choose another option, is there anything in the budget that's built toward expenses for next year for that?
On either one of the proposals that we have, there is nothing built in for the 2025 proposed budget that they have right now. If we just ran the water lines to Baldwin, $2 million for that, as opposed to $10 million for the plant. But the biggest thing is, by law, we, the city of Demorest, have to give that asset to the city of Baldwin. They have to own it. We won't own it, but we'll own, per the agreement, all the water rights that come out of there. So is it better to do that, or is it better to build a water plant and you have the whole, you have that? That's where, with EMI and Fletcher Holiday, we're working toward that. And those are meetings we're still planning for November and December, so we can make a plan. Because our first step we had to get was the water flow test confirmation, which we did.
And the water coming out of there is good.
Oh,
You're just concerned about it going back.
right now, what happens? It is in a very close quarters. This had in there, I'm not gonna say the right thing, so don't anybody quote me on what I'm gonna say on that. But it's got some kind of magnesium something that causes a little discoloration. It passes every state water test, but it does not pass my eye test. If your water was a little dingy, you wouldn't want to drink it, cook, or wash your white clothes with it. Because what it has to happen is to get this, Rick, what's the correct term? You know what I'm talking about, this magnesium? You know, from the biology side, it's okay. Something to that, okay, but don't quote me on that exact part. But what has to happen, it has to have a way to filter itself out, and it settles, and it's no longer there. Because this well sits on a piece of property that's about half the size of this room from right here to right there. It has no way to settle. When it's pumped, it's going straight into the system. And those people that live close by there, they see that water color. They see that. You and I don't see it over here because it's had a chance to filter out by the time it gets around 435 miles of water lines.
So what would it take to, correct that issue?
What if,
The concern I have is, you know, we're gonna continue, involvement is gonna continue going up. We're gonna continue paying more.
yes, ma'am.
So, why not invest in our own situation?
That is the magic question that these five will be getting the facts on some more to make that decision. Because what it has to have a place for it to settle for this that's in there. Not enough room for how it's being used right now where the houses are until it gets to go further out into the water lines. It's no contamination. That's the key to this. There's no contamination. It's your eye test. Passes every certified test by EPD. That's the important part.
We can all agree.
But you're dead on, Miss Gail.
Yeah, I think the issue is, I mean, we all pay for water. And when you're paying for city water, you expect it to have the correct consistency, the correct smell, and everything with that. So if you were at one of those houses, they're paying the same thing that you're paying where you live too. So it kind of doesn't seem, to me, in my opinion, appropriate. You know, they're paying the same thing we're getting, but to them, it seems like an inferior product. And you've hit the nail on the head as far as the decision that has to be made, you know, in the next few months or year about what do we do with that well. I mean, if we get that and it's like what Mark described, where it gives us an additional 1,000,000 gallons a day, that's 1,000,000 gallons a day we don't have to purchase from Baldwin or Toccoa. All we have to do, if we choose to send it to the treatment plant in Baldwin, all we have to do is pay for the treatment of that water. But we own the rights to that water that comes from that well, if that's the path that we choose to go forward.
The issue you may have with spending $10 million on a treatment facility is 6 months from now, that well may go dry. I think from our study, it looks good, but that is something to consider.
It's a very valid point, and, you know, an awful concern of mine too. And we need to look at the grand picture of everything before we make that decision. With this conversation, okay, Nick, our talk has something they want to look over, or is that for you?
Dave, why don't we let Dave do that so I can rest again from my throat? And so everywhere I do the land use, that's okay.
Maybe. Well, let's stay, I wasn't sure if that was part of the budget, so gentlemen, y'all have any other further things y'all would like to talk about the budget? Looking at the budget, does the public have anything you would like to discuss about the budget?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Building a budget's not easy, and I commend you all, particularly your staff, for doing this. Most of these line items aren't flexible. You're talking about personnel, you're talking about insurance, you're talking about things that we can adjust. They're fixed, and they continue to increase. And looking at the things that might be adjustable, again, we all know that a budget is nothing more than a guide for us, a guide for the city about how we may spend the monies that we do bring in, be it water, be it taxes, be it any other source of revenue that we have. few things, try to find a middle ground here that would be a win for both council and for the residents. Look on page one, special events and decoration, we've gone from $5,000, fifth line up from the bottom, $5,075 proposed on that. I know some decorations are going up, but I guess the question is do we want to go up $2,500, or do we want to hold the line where we're decorating for at least a year? And that would be $2,500. I see insufficient funds in two different places, and so you do the math and the insufficient funds, and we're looking at, that's on, we got them added up. On the last page, we got $5,000 for insufficient funds. First page, we got $4,000 for insufficient funds. That's 256 bounce checks.
That's not us bouncing check, those are fees coming back to us.
That we're being charged because it's in the expense line.
We get an expense from the bank,
Yeah.
because when Little Johnny's check bounces back to Tradition's Bank, Tradition's Bank charges us for that insufficient check. But we are charging the $40 fee back on him on that. So the city is not bouncing checks. That's insufficient funds from somebody paying the city.
Let's just make sure we pass that through to the customer so that we're not.
We do, because when I look at the bank account every day, I mean, I guarantee you, I got 4 or 5 every day where Little Johnny's check bounced back.
So if we're doing a straight pass through, then I might suggest that we can zero out that $4,000 and that $5,000, now we got $9,000 that are zeroed out, because it's a pass through.
Well, I don't think it is pass through. I think maybe I generate a little bit on the city side. You know where that was?
I do not with that, but what I can do,
It's minimal.
maybe when you make a notation
Positive on the city
of
side.
the insufficient funds, then I can have that for the next meeting.
And back to the clarification, the insufficient funds, we did one time we did bounce a check or two.
Right.
Page 2, code enforcement, we went from 2,000 to 13,600.
Right. Just what I was saying, none of that is Dave's salary. Those are expenses on the legal side, which is where that whole thing adds up. We do have, he's had to create summons in there, so he's had to print items. When he gets into the legal work of sending out certified letters, we'll have to pay somebody to do a
Title search.
run the title to see who really owns it, because I got it on, what I see around, a lot around here is, it's still in some person's name, but Little Johnny's living there, but Little Johnny doesn't own the house. He's inherited, but they haven't done the paperwork to transfer the title. Because then what am I doing? Because then I'm dealing with a deceased person that owns this, and if there's a will, if there's an executor. So those are just one examples of what could happen with that. But we can't enforce anything unless we know who the owner really is, and that cloud could be on that title. And then is it really worth the city to tear down the house? Because there's so many clouds, it won't be able to be sold.
Well, and I guess my point is, I understand all those fees. The question is, and the economic time here where we're all struggling to some degree, do we really need to be in the business and generate $13,000 for somebody else's property that they're paying taxes on? Unless it's an absolute threat to their neighbors. We don't want to negatively impact our neighbors in any way, shape, or fashion, but at the end of the day, as long as someone else, they're paying the taxes on that, and we want to generate that. And we may want to.
And with that, Mr. Mayor, I get so many phone calls per week of a dilapidated house, cars parked in the grass, junk in the grass, constantly. And we tried a private company when I first came, and I tried one of our police officers to do it, and we weren't getting anywhere, but I was still getting the complaints. These guys were getting complaints. So part of my job when I found Dave, when I got his resume, he has the background in code enforcement from Savannah and other places where he knows that law. Because of those, that's the way I took it and put him as part of that. And if council doesn't want him to do code enforcement, just to be the fire chief, there is, like Rick says, $13,000. That's for y'all to tell me y'all wanna change. And this-
Now, can I interrupt y'all for a sec? While I understand the city putting an expense out, going through the legal process, while it's not a rapid return, if we don't get our money back, that part of that legal expense is putting a lien on that property so that if they ever do anything with that property, we get our money back through the sale of the property. It's the lien on it. It also, the state also has state law that has been created, which we have not adopted here yet. And literally just, the discussion literally just opened up, is that there are blight laws that have been created where we can use eminent domain. And the city can take the property and then it becomes an asset of the city. They can turn around and they can sell or develop however they want.
I'm gonna take from someone who's been in the city a long time, the last thing I wanna do is see this city get an eminent domain business and they get with private property. And with due respect, and I realize that I got the same phone call, right? And I started 8 years, just like y'all do, I have tremendous respect for what you do. It's not easy handling those phone calls. But if we've got folks that are self-implemented pretty police to make sure that properties meet their particular standards, I think we need to come up with what that particular standard is. I know we do have standards, but at the end of the day, the property belongs to the people that pay the taxes on those things. And so in a tight year, maybe we should think about cutting that down just a thought and not a critique. And there are other areas that probably could gain $60,000 and put us in the middle of the road on that. The last thing that I'll say is something that we struggled with during the time that I was sitting there, is we've got two very large non-tax paying entities in the city that, frankly, aren't helping us any. At Ladder Truck Services, Hospital, and Piedmont University. And I don't think anyone can adequately argue that the impact of 1,000 students and the number of people coming into the city day in and day out doesn't impact us in some way to cost us something as a city. Doesn't mean that they don't contribute, because I'm sure, I know that they do, but at the same time, we've got no taxable income coming in on those things. So it's my hope that whereas Piedmont particularly has contributed to the city in the past to help us make ends meet, that those negotiations could possibly be had.
And we've started some of those negotiations. They've had a great idea that Mark and I took over there, so we're having some conversations.
Thanks, sir.
But unfortunately, that won't help us maybe this budget year, but maybe next budget year. So we're working towards something like that.
Again, please hear me, I do appreciate the work that each one of you do. It's not easy.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak on the budget before we close this public hearing?
I was looking at, it was underneath the fire, the education training software, computer small equipment. The budget really jumped on those 3 items. Any reason why?
Dave, go ahead.
So some of those items, as you heard Mark mention earlier, we had a record-keeping problem. So the only way to truly retain records was we decided we had to digitize those records. So we had to buy software in order to do that. Prior to that, almost all of our records were on paper, and for whatever reason, to be completely honest with you, for whatever reason we don't understand, when we got here, most of them were gone. Someone had removed them from the station, and for whatever reason, they were gone.
What about the education and training? It jumped from 4,000 to 21,500.
Okay, so 4,000, training for our firefighters is expensive. So what we did was we right now, we can only do limited training at the fire station. We don't have the facilities to do training. So in order for us to do training, we either have to send people somewhere or we have to go leave the city and go into Baldwin to do training. So the goal here was to increase our local training capabilities. While some people never heard of the concept, we have training towers. Clarksville does not have one, but Baldwin does. Cornelia used to have one. It's out of service right now. But our concept right now is just to put some shipping containers in place that are stacked, that we can do hose training, search and rescue training, ventilation training, that we actually can do it on property and not leave the city limits. The second thing is that a lot of specialized training, you have to leave. So you can't do it here locally.
What about the small equipment? It jumped from 6,000 to over 48,000.
That is correct, ma'am, because in the last, and we'll kind of talk this in the last, and to be honest, the last 5 years, there's been almost no movement in the change of our budget. And so while we have the equipment to do our job, there are a lot of items that we can use to make our jobs a lot easier.
And what type of equipment would that be?
So right now, some of those things we talked about earlier was hose. People don't realize one piece of fire hose, there are multiple sizes of hose we use. A 5-inch hose, that's what we use to connect from the fire hydrant to the fire truck, is about $1,500 for 100 feet. The hose I carry into your house when we come running in your house is 1 3/4 hose. It's $500 a piece.
How many times have you gone to where you've already used hoses and do that work?
And do they work?
Yeah.
We've been successful to not have a fire in the city limits that has burned a house. We've had car fires and brush fires, and some of our hose does leak. It does have issues. We have used hose in other cities, but most of the fires we've gone to have been to help other cities right now. So we do have some hose that is going bad, that is a serious liability. If that hose pops, I can't put your fire out.
Well, I can understand the issue of the fire hoses. What I don't understand is the need for a fire truck.
For a fire truck?
Yeah. If you've got a fire, how many fires have we had in this city?
Okay, so we run, right now we run about 1,400 calls a year. Of those fires, I don't have those statistics with me tonight, but I can provide those to you if you want me to scale. We run probably 200 to 300 possible fires a year in the city limits. And so what happens is there may not be a fire, but we're being called that there could be a fire. It could be a fire alarm going off in a house. It could be smoke coming out of a house that turns out to be smoke. But if it were a fire and I don't have the fire truck with me, how do I put the fire out? So that's why we take the fire truck to every single call, because if you don't have the fire truck, I can't put the fire out.
Insurance policy.
Yeah, and so we're gonna go into this so you understand exactly that there's really, in your pocket, there's really an effect of what I'm about to talk to. In your personal pocket, you'll understand what's gonna happen.
Besides the hose, what else is on that?
So there are a number of items, and I don't have that list here, ma'am. If you want to provide that, I can come up with that list. So we needed some new nozzles. We have some light rescue equipment that needed to be added. There are a number of tools that we don't have. I'll give you an example. The college. The college. If I have, and people don't realize, some of our dormitories in the college, and why they don't pay taxes to us, that we're responsible for covering. Some of those buildings don't have sprinklers. And I've got 300 and 400 and 500 people living in those buildings. And so what happens is in the middle of the night, our fear, middle of the night, everybody's sleeping, and we've had the incident where the alarm didn't go off, but someone smelled smoke. But we went over there, and it wasn't a fire, thank God. But for me to manually take hand tools, which are about $500 for the set of tools to pop your door, will take one firefighter about 60 seconds to open your door. If I have 150 doors to open, how long is it going to take? We included a tool called the strong arm in there where I could literally pop every single door in 15 seconds. I can go 15 seconds, 15 seconds, 15 seconds, and one guy's doing it. I don't have enough people. I'm going to tell you, the physical exertion of opening doors, it hurts. It takes some endurance. We just don't, I'm going to be honest, we don't have the number of firefighters in the county as a whole that are going to be able to do that kind of work, plus fight the fire and do all the other activities. So we included some forcible entry tools to make our lives easier.
And it does just benefit us in the school. It's 15 seconds to get through your front
From your front door, if you're stuck in it.
versus 60 seconds. With modern day construction, that's a 48% increase of the save.
Our goal is just to save your lives and make our lives easier and make your lives better, make it safer so I can get to you and do the job quicker.
Is there any reason why this wasn't addressed last year?
I'll tell you, I can't speak for what happened last year, but I can tell you what happened when I arrived here.
When did you arrive?
I arrived here as the part-time fire chief in February, first week of February or so. Started really getting in the hands on my weekends. I was going 7 days a week. Full-time job in South Carolina. Up here part-time, going 7 days a week. I did that for about 5-6 weeks. It's exhausting. And I started full-time March 11th. And at this point, I'm going to be honest with everybody, and I told them I'm still technically going 7 days a week because of the situation we're about to talk about here in a minute. I don't get much of a break. When I leave, I have to pay someone to cover me. It's expensive because of what we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Let me close the public hearing before we move forward. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on the budget, council, public? Does anybody have anything else you'd like to speak on?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you gonna approve the budget today or the 22nd?
22nd, so we have another hearing on the
Because I
22nd.
don't wanna go through this before the 22nd.
Yes, please. If anybody has anything you'd like to talk about, please.
Please
bring it
call me,
forward.
come by, see me, and we'll get you the answers on any questions.
All right. No more. We'll close the public hearing of the 2025 budget, and we'll skip over land use, and we'll come back to that. We'll move on to fire-related issues. So, Chief, what do you have for us?
All right, so a little background for you gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity to speak to you. Back in March, we had our retreat. I laid out some items to you that we needed to evaluate. There were things that we had to develop in a plan. So as time has gone on and we've tried to accomplish and try to get by with what we have and do what we needed to do, one of the things that we did do, Chief Lully and I took the state's chief fire training class. There's actually a certification for state fire chief. So we both went to that class. It was about 2 weeks ago. In that class, it was broken down to a number of different instructors that come in and talk about a number of different things and the different organizations coming and laying out what we do and how they do it to interact with us. And one of the ones that caught my real big attention is the one that I brought to you a number of times. And Mark has covered some of this, but I really want to emphasize it to you. ISO came in. They actually brought several of their people, some of their evaluators who do this, in to have some hard discussions with us, where we were able to actually play some hypothetical things with them and sit down and really have some hard discussions. It was eye-opening. There were some things that I was aware of, some things that I thought, well, it's okay, we can work with that. What has happened here in the insurance industry is that, and I'm going to cover this, is that the insurance industry is losing money. And what is the insurance money companies in the business to do? Of making money. So they're losing money. So what's one avenue they can do to make more money? And that is to insure you and charge you more money. So the goal is for us to be low so we don't have a cost on them. So let me get into the details here. I got a PowerPoint presentation, and I know it's hard for some of you to read. But ISO, as Mark said, is your insurance company. It is a third-party person, but they're paid for by the insurance company. So you might as well just say the insurance company is coming here to see you. They want to evaluate the department. It's like no different than an auditor that shows up in a business or the city shows up. They're auditing you to make sure you're doing your job the right way. There are standards they've laid out. This year alone, statistics show that 15 to 25% increase in your property insurance without a loss. I mean, Mark's even mentioned it, that he's had the increase. We've had several people, their property insurance has gone up. It goes right back to what you're saying. They want to make money. They raised our rates. So without a loss. If our ISO number, which is a 3, and I'll explain this in a minute, and it's the next thing, is 1 to 10. 1 is the best fire department. 10 is you're an unrateable fire department means you have no fire department that's really equivalent to be rated. So the insurance company wants a 1 because they don't want a risk. But they'll be happy to take you at an 8 or a 9 because they're going to charge you a ton of money. Okay, so you got to look at it that way. This is basically the same slide, but this slide is unique because it comes out of Forbes magazine, which is a finance company. It's Forbes magazine, and I have the link on the bottom. And it basically, the key that you need to take from is in the middle line is that if your insurance ISO rating goes southwards, goes closer to 10, your insurance rates are going to go up. And if we hit a 10, there's a good chance they can just deny you coverage. They just cut your coverage and you don't have property insurance anymore. So that's a key here that you all need to understand. We have to do something. Those lines strictly come straight out of Forbes magazine. ISO rates the city and not on just the fire department now. You have to understand there's 4 parts to it. The fire department, it's 105.5 points that you can get. It's a rating scale with points. 50 points comes for the fire department. What we actually do, what we provide, what we have, our staffing, the equipment. 40 points comes back to our water department. 10 points comes back to 911. I have no control over 911 and what happens at 911 and the communication system of 911. I have a voice, but that's a county agency, so I can't determine and help you get the maximum points there. And then community outreach is community education, which is one of those budget line items that was increased as well. Is we need to get our fingerprints out into the public more public education, more fire safety education. There are points there for it. So the next one is, how do we prevent an ISO 10? Because I'm going to be honest with you folks, this is where I got a little scary, and I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to lay out the honest facts for you. You need to hear the facts. If we do not have 4 firefighters responding to every structure fire, possible structure fire, or fire alarm, which could be a structure fire, and there's about 200 to 300 of them we go to a year. If we don't have 4 on every single one of them internally, automatically you go to an ISO 10, which means there's no fire department here. So you understand what Mark was saying before. There's no fire department. We run with 2 and me, and then when he's around, we're at 4, but he's not around all the time. He's a part-time employee. So we're running with 2, sometimes 3. We're not meeting the minimum base requirement of 4.
Who said that?
Who said what?
Who said we had
ISO, the ISO corporation, the company that comes and rates us, has that rule. It's Rule 201. And I provided the council with a notebook. You all got their notebooks? Yeah, where you can actually, I printed that out for you. Lance put it all together where you can actually read the rules. Rule 201 clearly states if you don't have 4 firefighters internally responding, you're an ISO 10. ISO clearly told us when they walk in the door, the first question they're going to ask us is to see our incident reports, and are we showing 4 firefighters going to every possible potential structure fire? We can't do that. We don't have that staffing. So that's an issue for me. The next slide says we have to have 4 on duty 24/7. That's the only way we can avoid a 10.
They have to be on duty.
They have to be on duty. If they're not on duty, they have to be certified volunteers responding. We don't have that. We could have our paid guys come in off duty and pay them on time, but our staffing doesn't allow that. The way most of our guys have full-time firefighter jobs in other places. We don't have that. We don't have people that show up. I have 1 regular that shows up like that, and that's it. So it's very difficult for me to meet. I really can't meet that requirement. So how do we fix it? We have to add the full-time assistant chief position. That gives me some relief because I am going 7 days a week, ladies and gentlemen. It's hard for me to go on vacation and not have relief. I've left a few times and my phone blows up and it's constant. It's I accepted that. I'm willing to do that. I love my job. But there just comes a time where there's got to be someone in the background to help out on a full-time basis. The second thing we have to do is we have to add a minimum of 1 career firefighter per shift, a total of 3 firefighters. That's $151,000. The full-time assistant chief job at $60,000. We have to increase the number of part-time positions. Presently, we're staffed with 1 full-timer on duty, a lieutenant, and a part-timer on duty, 24/7. We have to add a part-time employee, and I have to hire part-time employees, as well as full-time employees to make this work. It's going to cost an additional $140,000 a year to do that. So total staffing during the day would be 1 full-time lieutenant, 1 full-time firefighter, and 2 part-time firefighters on duty, and then Chief Luliet and I would fill any gaps and do whatever was needed in the middle to make sure we met that requirement. There's some things we need to consider going down this road. Turnout gear is about $6,000 a set. So just hiring 3 firefighters is $18,000 in turnout gear that I have to purchase. Then I have to put them in a uniform. It's $3,200. Then we start increasing the number of part-time employees. I have to buy them a set of turnout gear and a uniform as well. I've estimated I need about 8 part-time employees. That's a lot of money in turnout gear, and that's $48,000. Then we're talking about uniforms at $6,700, $6,800. Then we talk about the training budget. This is one of those things that we were talking about a little while ago that's actually not on your paper. It's actually on mine. $19,500 increase on what's already in the training budget of $21,500. Why is that? We presently have advertisements out for firefighters, part-time firefighters, and lieutenants. 9 out of 10 applications that I'm getting, there are people wanting to be firefighters. They're working in a restaurant. They're fixing cars for a living. They don't have a fire. They want to be firefighters. They have no firefighter skills. So I have to train them the basic skills. It's $6,500 per student plus their salary for me to send them down to Forsyth to spend 10 weeks to come out a certified firefighter. So I had to add that in there. That's something we have to consider if we're going to do that. So we have a total increase in the staffing. I have 450. I know we have some numbers. 450 is what the budget that Mark and I fought for and argued, and we went to bat with each other, and we came out and said 450, and we could make it work at 450, but it's not feasible with this new revelation that we have to have 4 internally. So that increases that number. Now understand this. Just because we put 4 firefighters on duty does not mean we're going to an ISO 3. We're not going to be an ISO 3 unless we make these other adjustments and come up with a plan. We have to have a financial strategic plan to get through these issues. So let's talk about this one thing. Really briefly, I'll talk about this. Ladder truck. You know the ladder truck's out of service. It's a giant paperweight. It does run. I can drive it up and down the street, but we drove it to a funeral knowing it was out of service, and lo and behold, it died in the middle of the street. It's got electrical issues where all the wiring needs to be replaced, which was identified in the refurb. There's a short somewhere in the wiring, and the wiring is multiple gauges. There's hundreds upon hundreds of wires, and they're running through the truck. We don't know which wire it is. So ladder truck requirements. It's based on 2 things, fire flow and stories, the number of stories in your structure. If you have 5 buildings in the city that are 3 stories or more, or 5 buildings that have a fire flow of 3,500 gallons a minute or more, or any combination of the 2 to meet 5, a ladder truck is required within 2.5 miles of all of those buildings. Calculate fire flow, so you understand fire flow, and this is the simplest way I can explain it. It's length times width of the building divided by 3. So if you have a 100 by 100 square foot 100 by 100 square foot building, it's 10,000 square foot. You divide it by 3, it's 3,333 gallons, 0.3. But here's the trick. You add a second story to it, We're now at 6,666 gallons. So I want to ask y'all, do y'all have any idea how many of these buildings we have inside the city limits? You don't have to answer me, but just in your brain, if you want to answer me, how many of these buildings do you think we have in the city? There's more than 50 of them. It's not a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 50 of them that meet these requirements. The ladder has to be within 2.5 miles. I am engaging in discussions with Cornelia for automatic aid for their ladder truck, but here's what the problem is. 2.5 miles. We have a number of those buildings that are outside of the 2.5 miles, so we will not get the credit. So that becomes an issue. The hospital is one of them, and there's a little highlighted on the bottom of that page there. So you understand is that a home, we refer to them in our terminology as McMansions, if it's 4,500 square feet or larger, it's a commercial structure, and they consider it requiring a ladder. So we have one subdivision that, we have more buildings than that, but we have one subdivision that has 5 of them alone. And we don't have a ladder truck within 2.5 miles of it. Pumper requirements. Mark touched on this a little while ago. ISO wants you to see that you can independently meet the requirements of our city fire flow. So what they do is ISO comes in and says, well, the average of your building fire flow, plus they take a mathematical formula of what our hydrant water system can do, and they say, this is the number. 3,500 is the max that they'll give you. So if the rating, for example, if you use New York City, some of those buildings are in the millions of gallons, but fire flow is 3,500 gallons is the cutoff. If you don't meet 3,500 gallons, we're having an issue. How was the last one obtained? A phone call. They rated the city at 2,750 gallons. Now, where did they come up with that number? It was a phone call discussion. The pumper that we have, the new pumper that's 3 years old, pumps 1,500 gallons a minute. The ladder truck pumps 1,250 gallons a minute. 2,750. The guy said, sounds great over the phone. That's what you got. The only way you're going to be able to get out of that hole and come close to back to Community 3 is you have to either refurbish the ladder truck and hopefully get 3 years out of it, and in those 3 years, come up with a plan to replace it. Right now, it's $1.75 million estimated that you're going to have to spend to replace that ladder. And as we talked about inflation earlier, it's 20 to 30% per year on that cost. That goes up every single year. Ladder truck used to be able to get, because it has a pump on it, it has water on it, can no longer be dual rated as a pumper and a ladder. You can't get points on both. You either use it as a pumper or you use it as a ladder. So we got our credit with 2 and a reserve. We had a reserve. We sold the reserve, so we lost those credits. We don't have that engine, which I've never seen before. I've seen pictures of it, but we lost that ability. The second pumper, to buy a full Class A pumper like we have down there would cost you about $900,000. But a mini pumper that we talked about back in March is about $400,000 to $450,000 right now. It does have a pump of 1,500 gallons a minute and will get us, of the 3 points that we need, it'd get me 2.9 of those 3 points and save the city $500,000. I'm willing to sacrifice the 0.1 point for the $500,000. Here's the catcher on that that's at the bottom of that. If all 3 of those trucks are not inside of a heated bay, they don't count. They will not give it credit. My fire station only has 2 bays capable of having fire trucks in it. I didn't even include that in this. So my question to you, gentlemen, what do you want your ISO rating in the next 3 to 5 years? Because ISO will probably be here in the next 12 to 18 months. What do you want your fire department to look like? My final note for you is that we are not the only department that is going to get hit with this. We are not the only department in this county that's going to have this issue. And I will leave it at that, but we are not the only ones that is about to have an awakening here that is going to cost some money.
Thank you for putting this together.
do you-
Thanks for your proposal.
Do you have any idea, estimate about the difference in a average insurance premium for a homeowner between ISO rating dropping down one level?
So based on research, here's the question, and that question comes up frequently, and it's a hard question to answer. Because if you call your insurance agent and ask that question, they're going to say, I don't know, because you have to talk to the underwriter. They don't just give you the underwriter's phone number and say, well, just call him and ask. Now, based on my research, it's about 10 to 14% per point that you drop. That's what the average, what I find in research. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but if you're paying $1,000, you're going up $140. You're going up $140 if we drop from a 3 to a 4. Yeah, you're dropping from 1,000. Now you're going to 1,140. But if we were to drop to 7 or 8, which is a real possibility, you're talking about another $1,000, $1,500 on your property insurance. If we go to a 10 and don't have the staffing, they're going to cancel you, or they're going to double or triple your rating. I don't mean to put the scare out there, but this is the reality of the fire department. Many, many years of neglect. We came in here and we've done everything we can to do what we can to make it better for y'all. We would love to be able to get to ISO 1, but we know the reality. We need to be at a 3. We need to be at a 3 because that's what the people who pay taxes here have right now. And that's just not feasible with one fire truck based on the way ratings are done. I know it's a tough one, but that's the reality of where we are.
Thank you again for putting all this together. I appreciate you serving us, serving our community.
Proud to do it. Proud to do it, my friend. Thank you.
Gentlemen, y'all have any questions for our chief?
If we ordered a new pump truck, how long would it take?
Well, that mini pumper that we talked about right there, in research, I could have that within probably 90 days. There are 2 companies that manufacture that specific truck. I'm sure I can go to any of the companies and give them a spec that meets that requirement. But there are 2 companies right now that are building them regularly because it's in demand. One of them is in Michigan, Minnesota. The other one is actually here in Georgia. They're pumping them out, 3 or 4 of them every 2 months, month and a half. So you could get that probably in 90 to 120 days. You could have that second pumper.
Mr. Councilman, if you were to purchase a new Class A pumper like the one out back, it takes 18 to 24 months for construction from bid process. And a new aerial takes 26 to 32 months for delivery upon completion of construction.
So I understand what he's saying. If y'all were to say, gotta buy a new ladder truck, do it right now, make it happen. That ladder truck isn't gonna be here for 3 years.
So if we decide to purchase a ladder truck and ISO comes in and inspects us,
So so that what they would do, they would say, okay, as long as you're working down that plan, we will hold your rating until that day comes. So something I didn't put in this PowerPoint presentation, it used to be in the old days, because they're making things very strict, one of the things they used to do is they'd say, okay, to the city manager and the fire chief, here's your rating. You got better, you got worse, you'd say the same. So if you got worse, they said, okay, we're going to give you a year to rectify the problem, to go back to your elected officials and rectify the problem, or you can just accept it as it is right now, y'all's choice. They don't do that anymore. Now you got 60 days for y'all as elected officials to say, we're taking action, we're going to spend the money and do what it is. Otherwise, they publish the number on day 91. So that's another stringent requirement that they put on y'all. They put on all of us that really tightens the noose. That's all they're doing is tightening the noose. It's all about money for them. Money for me as well when you really look at the picture. But in the end, it's the property owners in our city who are going to be affected with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in insurance increases.
Yearly.
Yeah, yearly. So I can't give you that exact number, Sean, but it can be significant.
Thank you. to discuss upcoming information as you will. Any more questions or comments or concerns, gentlemen?
I think a major concern that everybody needs to realize, according to the last census, 25% of the citizens of this city were poverty. I'm sure when the next census is done, that's gonna go up. They've already had 2 water increases. They've already, and now we're talking about a property increase, and now we're talking about I forget how many $1 million a fire truck is, but, you know, somewhere or other, people's pocketbooks here have got to tighten up. And that goes for salary.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
They don't get a salary increase. I don't get a salary increase either.
Well, let's take a 5-6 minute recess and then we'll reconvene on land use and sewer board. Just take a little break.
And, the contractor, we've been made aware of that probably 60 days ago.
Thanks, Casey.
And, he is requesting that we pay a fee of half the cost of the equipment that he was having to use to do the sewer bore. And the other real cost is the cost of a performance bond, which is approximately $5,300. And if we terminate tonight, I've had several communications with the contractor, and then he went silent on me. And we terminate this, Thomas will send a certified letter to the contractor saying we've terminated this per the terms, and we would offer to pay your cost that you showed us of your cost of the bond, performance bond.
So we terminate, what is the cost of the performance bond that we would be paying?
$5,300 approximately.
How much are we saving by discontinuing the sewer?
Well, the cost of the project was $535,000. So we would be allocating that, the rest of those funds, and the additional funds that we would have spent would have been all on the engineering, the legals side that we had to do for these easements, and et cetera.
The project's been terminated.
Not until y'all officially vote. I have notified the contractor through email that we were going to terminate. We need the final cause of that, and then Thomas can send the certified letter to officially stop that.
That's issues. And that's why we're terminating.
Project does have issues, and we do need to, one of our SPOS promises and requirements with the sewer project, we need to utilize those funds towards the expansion of the sewer line, because that was one of our SPOS promises, that we do need to fulfill. So we do need to look at what project we move forward with. Thank you. Sewer. Expansion.
I'll make a motion that we terminate the board contract and allow Thomas to send a certified letter to the contractor.
We have a motion. Any other further discussion or second? All those in favor? Next, let's move forward to, last item is the updated land use map. Mark, are you rehydrated?
I am. Y'all look, Megan, when we pass out, James, can y'all pass out the bigger copy there? And then the chart. You're gonna get this copy that's gonna look like this of the land use. And inside this land use is a chart that's gonna show you what you can do with the property. So I'm gonna come down there again. If y'all have a problem, I'll
No, sir.
try to make it. There's a lot of information. On the land use. If I can direct y'all attention to this map. This map was done last in December of 2013, February of 2018, and it's got Rick's signature on it. And it was updated from 2013. That's when this
I'll
whole,
say about that, that's really the only thing that changed in that period was that red line that we added for the storage. No other thing really changed on that since it was originally done in like 04 or 03. So all this thing has been the same.
so the key.
So this map dates all the way back to 2003, 2004.
Well, what it says on this map right here is 2013 and then amended in 2018.
Well, in 13 is when they added sweetgrass and they annexed that in, so that's when that was added. But those original colors comes from 03.
Okay, and in that, this breaks out in this color code right here, the land use ordinances on what this could be. Now, this was our map that we presented to the public like in March, April, and May when we first proposed this land use. The green is institutional, which would be Piedmont, the city's property, and here's the two schools. This is Sweetgrass, I'm sorry, yeah, that's Sweetgrass, this is Legacy, this is, Hancock Meadows, which is right here, and then this is Havisham Landing. And then look at all the green, I'm sorry, all the yellow. see the orange, come to this map right here. We just recently updated these colors from all of our meetings. If you take all that yellow, look at all the blue that came out of that. That is what's going to be called agricultural, because it's larger tracts. In the agricultural, it would have one house per 5 acres. That way, all these larger tracts, that kind of protects the city and the neighborhoods of somebody coming in trying to assemble some property. They would have to come in front of mayor and council. When you look at this map of all the orange, look here, it's now colored pink, and it's called B1, where it was called HI for heavy, high intensity. So you can see where all the pink is, all the way through, primarily on 441 and Demorest Mount Airy being state highways. Businesses, houses that are still single family, but they could be turned into an office or something like that if they so choose. Then I've got the yellow here, which is R1 from Habersham Landing out Double Springs to here in town, all the way out there to Sweetgrass. This is the hospital, and this is Mount Carmel, right there at Habersham Mills. We used black to color in the same downtown district there. And again, in the high intensity, we've got new 2 levels now called B1 and B2. And I'll go over in a minute with the chart. You see red here, and red out here on 365. That's B2. This one and this one is that convenience store that's right here by you, Miss Gail, on Florida. And this one over here is what's in front of the fire station, that Chevron station. Those have to fall in because of the requirements into B2. And this out here is just a higher expectations out 365. The other thing from a smaller scale is I have a brown right here by the depot. I have a brown right here, right behind the Chevron. The L stands for light industrial. Those 2 properties, this is a mini storage building. This here is like a commercial warehouse building. So they have to fall into light industrial. That's the only 2 we have that does that.
So you mentioned the Exxon store. So you know where I live. So
Yes, ma'am.
what's high intensity mean?
Well, it's not anymore what we're proposing. High intensity gives it a lot of options for different businesses and things of that sort. But this is what we're upgrading to. It's going to be called B1 and B2. And when I get to my chart, we'll go over that very thing. So just bear with me to there. But these are what's existing there. I take in account my R1 is the yellow, and we'll go over the chart. R2 is multifamily. Could be a townhome, could be an apartment, it could be a duplex, a triplex. This subdivision being Hancock Meadows and Legacy are in purple, and this is their actual location. We put those in there because they're high density. There could be 6, 7, 8 units to the acre when they were approved back in time. That's not what we're doing anymore. Where Habersham Landing and the subdivision of Sweetgrass would be under a normal scenario of R1. You'll see where there is some other purple in here, Porter Street. Remember Kai was here last couple weeks ago. He asked for his piece right here to stay with multifamily because he has a triplex there. We did that. This is some townhome places around, right back here off of North Hazel and all the way around the Tomlin. We've got the public housing sitting right here. And then over here where the depot is, the depot has 2 or 3 units, and there's some others that have multifamily right there. That all being said, we pretty much kept everything the same type of zoning. Well, I didn't upgrade you or downgrade you. Again, if you look at the orange, you look at the pink. The properties are pretty much the same, what they were. Here is Johnny Gunn's piece right here. It's pink, so it would fall under the B1 chart when I would go over that in a second. Only thing that we did different, here is Piedmont's building that is right there by the bridge. Their maintenance shop, here is the fire department. If those two weren't owned by those two entities, they would probably be a business. So we zoned them B1 for that business use right there. Same thing with Dr. Hendrick's office that Piedmont owns over here. It used to be in the green zone, but it now went to pink. Just gives it a true use of what it is. It's a doctor's office that Piedmont owns now. If it ever went back, that would be the zoning. Any questions, not about details, but about colors, anything like that? No? Okay. Guys, behind this package in y'all's, you're gonna find the chart that looks like this. This will be the Bible, so to speak. This chart, you should have it separately too, that looks like this. This chart is what's gonna tell you what can go on that zoning. All of this, which I'm not gonna talk about, is will tell you how to put that property that's on this chart. It's gonna tell you how to do it. So that's the key to this. All right, y'all take this first page, which is table 6.1, 27 to 103 pages. In this black heading right here, it says A1, R1, and R2. You see that? Okay. Frankie, you got it? Miss Evans? And I did meet with Miss Evans and her husband this morning, so let's just go to R1. If it has a P beside that block, it means it's permitted. If it has an S, it means a special use, which means that has to come in front of council. And if it has an X, it means it's prohibited. So, in these first pages right here, of that first half quarter page there, going to this second page, it tells you all the uses of those three different types. But again, I'm going to zero in on the R1. And so if you go to the third page, which is table 6.2, it will look like this page here. Again, we're going to look at R1. You can have a maximum height of 35 feet, but cannot be more than 3 stories. The density for A1 is 1 unit per 5 acres. It says a half, but so under R1, you can have 4 units to the acre for subdivisions because they got sewer. It allows for more density. Everybody got me on that?
R1 can have 4 houses per acre?
Yes, remember an acre is 43,560 square feet. So this is roughly 10,000 something square feet. And y'all can change that number. It's up to y'all to change. This is just what we have proposed from that conversation. Now you take that over to the right-hand side of that same density. Everybody seeing the density? It says the density under R2, which is multifamily with sewer, would be 7 units to the acre, or up to 12 units to the acre with a special permit. Somebody wants 7 and they're willing to stay in these conditions, it's permitted. But if they want to go from 7 to 12, it's a special use. The next line down talks about the minimum lot size. In that 5 acres, that's 87,000 square feet. It's a 10,000 square foot lot in R1, and it's a 6,000 square foot lot for multifamily in R2. Go down to number 8. It tells you the minimum lot width. 200 feet in agricultural, residential is 75, and 45 feet in R2 because you got a higher density number. So they're being compressed to make that difference there. Minimum here, number 9, minimum square footage. For agricultural is 700, for R1 is 1,500. No home could be smaller than 1,500 square feet in a single family home. Now in R2, it's got to be at least 1,000 square feet. for multifamily. So if they have, and again, when we're talking about units per acre, think about a door. The front door is what we're talking about on multifamily. Somebody wants to have 10 units per acre, that's 7 doors. It's not about the number of buildings, it's about the number of front doors. Because any unit, if I got 4 buildings on the property and there's 4 units per building, that's 4 front doors times 4. That's gonna give me my maximum density for that. That make sense? And if you continue down that chart, yes, ma'am.
Alan had a question for our.
Okay,
discussion
yes,
we had
ma'am.
today. You had, where you said a door. A lot of houses, if somebody had a duplex, they put one door, but it was only an entranceway and then they shoot out.
That's still 2 front doors. It come down to technicality of, that's just an entrance into, but that unit still has 2 front doors. So, good question. But if you continue down that page, it will tell you your setbacks on the sides, things of that sort, those kind of details. The key is R1 is 4 units to the acre with sewer. And if you're not on sewer, it's pretty much going to be a half acre, a little more than a half an acre if you're on septic tank, and you'll have to deal with the public health on that scenario. And R2 is 7 with a special permit request up to 12 and the minimum square footage size. And then that continues on that page to discuss some landscaping, things of that sort. I wanted to hit the density, lot sizes, minimum square footage inside those.
And the special use permit has to come back before.
Yes, ma'am. It's either permitted within, and so you're sticking within these requirements in this chart line, or you're going outside and you're asking for a special use. And again, anybody can ask for anything. They may come in there and say, well, I'm going for special use. I'm going to ask for 12, I want 16. And again, it's up to these guys to say, I'll give you 12, but I'm not giving you 16, or I'll just keep you at 7. So it's all about that. All right, if you take that chart, go over 1 page at the bottom here, it says 7.1.
Wait just a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
I've got a question.
Okay.
My house was built in the late 1800s.
Right.
At that time, when it was built, I don't know whether it's 25 foot.
That's okay today, because you're back then, these are new regulations. If somebody's coming in here to build new, or let's say, God forbid, somebody tore down your house and wanted to rebuild, they would have to go by these setbacks. Your house is fine the way it sits.
Okay, well, the concern I've got is with the widening the road, is that gonna affect my house?
Anything that's there now, nobody's gonna say these ordinances affect you, so that shouldn't be a concern.
Okay, cause I don't wanna.
No, you shouldn't have any issue with that, Ms. Gill.
Oh, right.
All right, so the bottom of this is 7.1. Everybody there? This code is going to do OP, which is office professional, and the green, which is institutional. Then it's going to show you B1, B2. And then at the right hand side is the LI for light industrial. So again, this first page continuing into the second page, it has all these lists of items of what can go in as B1. I'm not going to go over those, but that's why I wanted to specify, guys, this shows you what can go in B1. It also shows you what can go in B2. So you can see there's a lot of X's under B1, and then under B2, it gives more things that it could be.
It's a really great time to start going through like this, talking about it, bringing it back to you, and looking at these things.
Right, absolutely, because this is what we're going to be going off of when y'all go to vote off of this on November 12th. These are the things, because let's just say it allows a car wash. I really don't want a car wash to be in B1. Well, now's the time for you to tell us to put it in B2.
Even better,
Carnival that's on the island permitted use in B2. Carnival in B2.
So these are the things that I need public to give back. So that second page, like I said, gives you all the different choices of a car lot, different things, caretaker, carnival, cemetery, those kind of things. And then the next page continues that same list of everything that is possible. And then the next page shows you that too. And then if you get down to this page at 7.2, everybody got this at 7.2. This is the nuts and bolts of it, where it says maximum height, 35 feet. But in B1 and B2, they can do 50 feet. But the same thing is 3 stories. It gets into the lot size, 10,000 square feet. It gets into minimum lot sizes, and it gives a lot width of how wide the lot has to be on road frontage. And then it will go into the different setbacks, landscaping, maximum lot coverage. And so the key to this one is look at those first 3 pages that gives you all the different business opportunities that could fit in any one of those, being office professional, B1, B2, and light industrial. That's what's going to tell. When Frankie calls me up and said, I want to do something with my property, I said, well, Frankie, have you looked at this chart? He said, yep, I have. I think I can meet all these things. I said, all right, let's look at it. And so I would go through and say, okay, you want to be B1? This is what you got to do. Can you do that? He said, I can do that. I said, okay, well, you either got to bring it forward to council or we can approve once you give me all the documentation. And the process is, starting November 16th, if the moratorium goes away, guys, is people can start applying that point for any rezoning within the city, but not until then. I get the package, or it comes to Megan, we're going to review the package with Thomas. We're going to make sure that we have all the required documents that's in this part and this part. And then we could redline them, send them back from a staff recommendation. And that could take up to 15 days. Then they could respond back, which could take up to another 15 days. And we could say, okay, we got a full package here, or we got to do some more work on this. Then once we have an agreed upon full package, we then can set a meeting date subject to the legal advertising of that to set that meeting. It's typically, I want to say, 15 days. So, however that falls, we normally meet on the first Tuesday of the month. But next month, we're meeting on the second Tuesday because of the election on the first Tuesday of the month. But normally, it's always the first Tuesday. So, I would have to have it into Megan, into the newspaper, minimum 15 days before that council meeting. And if I can't hit that date, then I have to roll to the next month. So, and again, every day for that developer or that homeowner that wants to do something, it's costing them time, money, and energy throughout that. Nobody can remember the last rezoning that would have been emotional, a lot of stress for the city, 10, 15 years. We had a town hall meeting before I got here with Joe Sleppy's part, but that was no application or nothing. It was just a discussion. So we here, I've got somebody that's telling me they want to do a gas station on Old 441 on a track that's zone commercial, they say, near the cemetery. I've got somebody, as we know, that's talking about a piece over here off of Long Street. That's the only 2 things that I know that anybody has said anything to me. So there's nothing that I'm aware of, guys, that's coming other than potentially those 2. So, is there questions for this chart? This chart is the key. Because that's where we look at first. What can they do? Does it qualify in here?
Is this your third printout of the proposed?
I can't say what the number is, but you got this from Thomas today.
So it's revised again since October.
I would go off of what we have right here, what you were given. And again, they could have, we'll discuss this again next Tuesday. There could be changes again. But again, I will stand before you, worst case on the 12th, say this is the new one. Things could change again, but nothing of any drastic amount.
Well, I've been reading it, but I thought I'm gonna quit reading it because it seems like it changes again.
Because you gotta remember, this has been, that current land use has been here 20, 30 years. And we're trying to update for the next 20 to 30 years. So,
There are minor changes in that. If you flip through it, you'll see the red line.
Okay.
He eliminated the comments, but there are some red lines.
And is it, on the website, if I pull up, will it now have the more
we
recent?
will have to
We'll
put
make
this,
sure that it's on there.
we just got this morning. Now it's
So
on
I
there.
gotta wait a couple of days for it to be updated, so I can click on it and get this new version.
Yes,
Well, you have the new version on paper.
Yeah, but no, if I wanted to make comments, as you were saying,
You can make comments and email them back to me separately. However you want to get them to me, or I will send them to mayor and council and to Thomas.
okay.
The quickest way you can get them, bring them back to me, handwrite. But do, Megan, we do want to put this as an update and this chart too. So, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. If y'all have something that you want to change, discuss, please bring that into Mark, please.
Sooner than later, please.
Everybody, we're gonna discuss it at our next meeting, but it's not gonna be, it's getting too late. So if we're gonna make changes, we'll start working on these now instead of the next meeting. So let's make sure we're getting these out in front of everybody prior to that. So I challenge you guys this week to dig through this. The chart is great. Thanks for y'all's hard work on that. All right. That being said, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
This might get slow. Yeah, we go on 3.5 weeks. I can't hard enough. I moved up the phone on. You guys, tomorrow, the chamber has a meeting in here, starting at 8. So we're leaving the table set up as they are. Main thing I need is we need to bring the easels and those 3 boards back to my office. If I can have some, put that in whatever Megan needs. Because otherwise, we're just gonna shut the doors and the chamber's coming in here about 8 o'clock.